Chapter 1. The Prodigal Returns. The final prayers rose around the grave like smoke, but the words blurred into static. Ada and Ketchy Harper stared at the polished mahogany coffin, at the sprays of white lilies wilting in the harmattan heat, and could not make herself believe this was real. 3 days ago, she had been sitting in her apartment in San Diego, answering emails about supply chain logistics. Now she stood in Lagos dirt, a widow before her time, the sole heir to an empire she had never wanted. Ada, a hand touched her elbow. She turned. Her Aunt Chinenma stood beside her, eyes red-rimmed but composed, dressed in traditional attire that Ada knew her father would have called too much. "The guests are waiting," Aunt Chidinma said. "You must receive them." Ada nodded. What else was there to do? She moved through the crowd like a ghost in expensive fabric. Hands reached for hers, cousins she barely recognized, board members whose names she had forgotten, investors who smiled with too many teeth. Each handshake came with whispers, delivered just low enough for her to catch, came straight from the airport, never even finished her MBA. Samuel should have named a interim CEO. The girl doesn't know what she's walking into. The words slid past her like water off glass. She absorbed them without reaction, her face settling into the same blank composure she had worn since stepping off the plane. Somewhere in the distance, she heard Toka Falayan's voice. Bright, appropriately somber, offering condolences to another group of mourners. The front desk receptionist had no business being here, yet there she was, positioned 3 rows back from family, taking notes on her phone like she was attending a conference. Adebola Ige waited at the edge of the cemetery path, his leather folder clutched against his chest like a shield. Their eyes met for a moment. He gave a small, respectful nod, the kind a lawyer gives a client he has never met in person but knows by reputation. "You are now the sole heir to Harper Industries." The thought landed in her chest like a stone. Her father's company. His life's work. The thing he had built while she was growing up in boarding schools and summer camps, always promising next time for quality time. She had spent 2 decades avoiding it, building her own life in America, pretending his world had nothing to do with her. Now it was hers. Aunt Chidinma reappeared at her side. "The reading of the will is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Adebola will conduct it at the estate." "The will," Ada repeated, the words strange in her mouth. "He named you everything, Ada. Every shares, every property. The board is already talking." Of course they are. She looked back at the grave one final time. The workers were beginning to lower the casket. In the gray-gold light of dawn, her father's name gleamed on the headstone. Samuel Olamido Harper, founder, visionary father. She had not cried yet. She wondered when the tears would come, or if they would come at all. "We should go," Aunt Chedima said. Ada turned from the grave and walked toward the waiting cars, feeling every pair of eyes guns on her departure like judgment made physical. The harmattan dust settled on her black suit as she moved, coating her in the color of the earth, her father's earth, her inheritance now. The law office smelled of old paper and expensive leather. Ada sat across from Adebola Ige at a mahogany conference table, watching him arrange his tablet and legal briefcase with the precision of a man who found comfort in order. "Shall we begin?" he asked. She nodded. Adebola spoke in measured, careful language that stripped away sentiment. The words washed over her sole ownership of Harper Industries, voting shares, real estate holdings, personal effects. Each item landed like a pebble in still water, creating ripples she couldn't yet process. "Your father's shares transfer to you in full, 51% controlling interest." He paused, letting the number settle. "The remaining shares are distributed among long-term employees and the company endowment, and the company leadership. The board expects your signature as incoming CEO within 30 days. Adebola slid a document across the table. "I'll prepare a formal memo announcing your arrival to all department heads. Standard procedure." Ada stared at the paper without reading it. 30 days. Her father had built this empire over decades. She had 3 decades to undo it or save it. She wasn't sure which. "There's more," Adebola said. He opened his briefcase and withdrew a thin stack of envelopes bound with twine.
"Your father left these for you, handwritten addressed to his daughter."
She took the envelopes. The handwriting was unmistakable, her father's careful, deliberate script. She had seen it on birthday cards during her childhood, on notes slipped under her dormitory door during school visits. "Would you like to read one now?" Her fingers trembled as she opened the first envelope. The paper was thick, expensive. The date on the letter was 3 years old. My dearest Ada, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I won't waste your time with apologies for the years we lost. Instead, I want to share something that took me decades to learn. The truest test of a person's character is not what they do when others are watching, it is what they do when they believe no one is watching at all. Watch how your employees treat the janitor, how your executives speak about their subordinates when they think the board isn't listening, how quickly loyalty dissolves when no one is recording it. You will be surrounded by people performing goodness. Find the ones who practice it in the dark. With all my love, Father Ada's voice caught on the final words. She pressed her lips together, steadying herself. Adebola said nothing. He watched her with quiet professional sympathy, the kind a doctor gives a patient receiving difficult news. She set the letter down carefully, as if it might crumble. When will the memo go out? She asked. Tomorrow morning, standard distribution. Can you delay it? A pause. Adebola studied her face. By how long? 1 week. I can extend the announcement by 7 days. He frowned slightly. May I ask why? Ada looked out the window at the Lagos skyline, at the glass towers catching the last light of afternoon. She wasn't ready to explain that she needed time to see the company clearly, not as her father had shown it to investors, but as it truly was. I need to understand what I'm inheriting, she said, before everyone knows I'm coming. Adebola nodded slowly, though his expression remained troubled. The board will have questions, let them wait. He made a note on his tablet. 1 week, but Ada ate. He hesitated. Your father believed in you. Deeply. Whatever you're planning, trust that his faith was well placed. She didn't answer. The weight of his words settled on her shoulders like her father's legacy he'd expecting impossible to refuse. The light outside was fading now, long shadows stretching across the conference table. Ada gathered her father's letters and stood, feeling the full weight of what she had inherited, not just a company, a responsibility she wasn't sure she could carry. The glass doors parted for Ada like the entrance to a cathedral. She stepped into the Harper Industries atrium and felt the weight of her father's ambition press against her chest. Mid-morning light poured through the skylights, catching the marble floor and turning the space into something luminous and cold. A living wall of tropical plants climbed the eastern wall, fern, ivy, philodendron greenery engineered for calm. Steel and glass railings caught the sun and threw it back. The hum of professional activity filled the air. Keyboards clicking, heels clicking, voices modulating into that careful corporate register that meant business was being conducted. Ada stood motionless, absorbing it all. Her father had built this. Every polished surface, every carefully chosen detail, every gradient of power encoded in how people moved through the space. Executives swept past with purposeful strides. Mid-level managers hovered near the coffee station, performing importance. Junior staff kept to the walls, eyes forward, invisible. She watched Toka Falayan at the reception desk first. A young woman with immaculate hair and sharp accessories, her posture a study in cultivated superiority. A messenger in a plain shirt approached with a delivery. Toke's smile remained fixed, but her eyes shifted past him as if he were furniture. She took the envelope without acknowledgement, already turning to the next person in line, a man in a pressed suit who received a different smile entirely, warmer, more engaged. The hierarchies of belonging revealed themselves in microseconds. Ada moved deeper into the lobby, past the reception desk, past Toke's curious glance. She didn't announce herself. She wasn't ready to become Ada Harper, CEO. She was still Lena, the name on her application, the name that would get her inside without suspicion. Along the corridor, framed photographs lined the walls. Her father shook hands with governors, with diplomats, with business leaders whose faces she half recognized from newspapers. He cut ribbons, unveiled plaques, smiled that warm, confident smile that had launched 1,000 press releases. Samuel Harper, builder of empires. Samuel Harper, man of the people. She caught her reflection in the glass-tailored black suit, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, the posture of someone who belonged. But she didn't belong, not yet. Maybe not ever, the fear that had lived in her chest since Lagos crystallized into something sharper purpose. She would not sign the CEO documents tomorrow. She would not walk into board meetings demanding respect she hadn't earned. First, she needed to understand what her father had built. The cleaning cart sat unattended near the service elevator. Ada grabbed it, tucked her designer sunglasses into her pocket, and pushed through the staff door into the corridors where the real company lived. The apartment in Ikoyi felt like a waiting room. Ada sat at the small table near the window, laptop open to the Harper Industries employee directory. The screen cast blue light across her face. Cold tea sat untouched beside her, forgotten hours ago. She had mapped the accounting department's hierarchy, studied shift patterns, memorized which corridors cameras covered and which cleaning closets remained unlocked after midnight. The company was a machine, and she was learning its gears. The black uniform lay folded on the table. She had bought it from a vendor in Yaba rough fabric, oversized, designed to disappear into. Thick framed glasses followed, a baseball cap, the kind worn by thousands of Lagos workers, worn shoes, scuffed at the toes. She held the uniform up. It smelled like detergent in other people's lives. In the narrow bathroom mirror, a deconstructed Lena, hair pulled back tight, tucked under the cap. Glasses sliding down her nose, she pushed them up, let them fall again. Shoulders rounded, spine curved. She practiced the walk, unhurried, weight on the balls of her feet, the gait of someone who had learned not to be noticed. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. Lena, she said. Her voice came out flat, accent shifting towards something more local, more forgettable. Widow. 2 children, new to Lagos. Contract cleaning service? She repeated it. Again, the words became a script, simple and unremarkable. Nobody questioned a widow trying to earn enough to feed her children. Nobody remembered her face. From her bag, Eda withdrew the first letter her father had written. She had read it a dozen times already, but her hand still trembled unfolding it. The true measure of a company is not what its leaders say, but how its people behave when they think no one of importance is watching. His handwriting filled the margins. Advice, warnings, love expressed in the only language he had ever fully trusted, words on paper meant for her eyes alone. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her pocket close to her chest. Tomorrow, she would walk through those glass doors with a mop and a bucket. She would clean offices while executives spoke freely around her. She would listen, watch, learn, and only then, only when she understood what her father had built, would she become Ada Harper, CEO. She switched off the lamp and stood in the darkness of her sparse apartment, ready to become someone else. The glass doors opened before her like a challenge. Ada pushed the cleaning cart through the atrium, the wheels humming softly against marble. Early light filtered through the skylights, catching dust motes in golden suspension. She moved slowly, wiping the reception counter, sweeping corners, polishing surfaces that already gleamed. The lemon and pine scent from her spray followed her like a ghost. Executives streamed past without a glance, briefcases clicked, suits whispered into phones. One man, pocket square, expensive shoes, dropped a coffee-stained napkin at her feet without breaking his stride. It landed near her mop. She picked it up without comment. Honestly, the cheap help they hired this year. Toke's voice carried from the reception desk. She spoke to another woman in matching heels, loud enough to ensure Lena heard. Like we don't have enough problems already. They just blend into the walls until you need them and then they out. She waved a manicured hand. Anyway. The laugh that followed was casual, effortless, the cruelty of someone who had never been invisible. Ada's jaw tightened. She pushed the mop harder against the floor. This was why she was here, to see how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. The revolving door turned again. Jason Namdi Okoye entered with the ease of routine. He was early, Ada would learn later he always was, and carried 2 cups of coffee, one already leaving a ring of moisture on his sleeve. He paused when he saw her crouching near the potted plant, wiping a spot no one would notice. Good morning. His voice was warm, unhurried. Thank you for making this place shine. He said her name, Lena, like it mattered, like she mattered. Ada's hand stilled. She looked up. His smile reached his eyes, genuine and uncomplicated. Morning, she managed. The word came out smaller than she intended. He nodded and moved toward the security desk, handing 1 cup to the guard there with a brief word that made the older man laugh. A small thing, unremarkable. But Ada watched him go, and something shifted in her chest, a pull she couldn't name, tangled with the guilt of receiving kindness meant for a fiction. She returned to her work, mop moving in steady arcs. The building held good people. This complicated everything. The accounting floor hummed with quiet intensity. Rows of desks faced spreadsheets, the blue glow of screens illuminating faces pinched with concentration. Ada pushed her cart down the corridor, mop dragging behind her, ears tuned to every murmur. She had chosen this rotation deliberately. Numbers told truths people hid. The conversation drifted from an open office door, Collins's office. His voice carried that clipped patience she recognized from the employee directory, senior manager, accounting, 20 years tenure. She paused near the water cooler, pretended to fiddle with the tap. The discrepancies need correcting before quarter end. Collins's tone was smooth, controlled. Ensure the signatures align with protocol. You understand. A younger voice, barely audible. Yes, sir. And if the audit team asks, flag them for routine internal review. Nothing formal. A pause. We handle our own matters here. Ada's grip tightened on the mop handle. Routine internal review. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. She moved on, cartwheels turning, cleaning where no one looked. The corridor stretched toward a secure door, filing room, the placard read. Her pulse quickened when she saw it ajar, a gap no wider than 2 fingers. No one noticed her watching. No one ever did. The building slept different at night. Ada waited in the stairwell until the cleaning crew finished their rounds, until the last security sweep passed and lights dimmed to amber glow. Her keycard, a duplicate she'd lifted from a distracted clerk's belt, buzzed the lock open. The filing room swallowed her in darkness. She clicked on her phone's flashlight, swept the beam across shelves. Folders, stacked neat, labeled by month. Her hands trembled as she pulled the first stack. Expense reports, transfer authorizations, monthly reconciliations. The numbers swam. Large sums moved to external accounts she'd never heard of, shell companies maybe, or phantom vendors. And the signatures. Her breath caught Samuel Harper's name. That distinctive flourish she'd seen in photographs on the company letterhead on her father's handwritten letters. Copied, forged, approved. Millions of naira stolen, using her father's dead hand. Ada photographed page after page, the flash of her phone catching dust suspended in air. Her vision blurred, grief and anger knotted in her throat. Her father, gone, his name weaponized against everything he'd built. Collins, the accounting manager, the trusted 20-year veteran. She had come to test herself, to learn her father's company. Now she held proof of theft, and the weight of it settled into her bones like stone. The investigator had awakened. There was no turning back. The wind tugged at her uniform as Ada climbed the final stairs to the rooftop terrace. Evening had settled over Lagos, painting the skyline in amber and gold. She pushed through the door and let the city breathe around her, traffic humming below, distant horns, the electric charge of approaching rain. The terrace was empty. That suited her. She pulled the baseball cap free, letting it hang from her fingers. Her hair fell loose and she welcomed the cool air against her scalp. The disguise felt heavier tonight. The glasses had left impressions on her nose. She set them aside and opened her laptop on the wrought iron table. The photographs glowed on screen. Transfer authorizations, forged signatures, dates spanning 18 months. Ada cross-referenced the numbers with company announcements. Collins had approved the promotions. He'd signed off on the restructuring that eliminated 17 positions, the very positions whose pension funds had been diverted. The timeline formed a pattern, ugly and clear. She opened her father's letter again. The paper had softened at the folds, worn from handling. Trust is the foundation of all institutions, and when that foundation cracks, the entire structure is compromised. She read it aloud, her voice disappearing into the wind. The words felt like a warning now, not just advice. 2 paths stretched before her. She could reveal herself, walk into the boardroom as Ada Harper, invoke her authority, have security escort Collins from the building. The fraud would end, tonight. But Jason would know. Everyone would know. The kind man who called her Lena, who thanked her for making the place shine. He would learn she'd lied, that the woman he'd been kind to didn't exist. Her hand hovered over her phone. Adebola Ige's number sat in her contacts. One call, and the legal machinery would grind into motion. Audits, investigations. The invisible vantage point she'd fought for would vanish. She closed the laptop. The evidence was compelling but not complete. Shell companies still needed tracing. The full web of complicity remained hidden. If she moved now, Collins would lawyer up, and his 20 years of institutional knowledge would bury the truth in procedural delays. She would wait. Gather more. Build the case that could not be refuted. The fear didn't leave. It sat in her chest like a stone fear of failure, fear of exposure, fear that she was not the leader her father believed she'd become, that the legacy she'd inherited was already rotten at its core. But she had chosen this path, she would see it through. Ada stood, tucked the laptop under her arm, and pulled the baseball cap low over her eyes. The Lena disguise waited below, and somewhere in the building, Jason was finishing his day, unaware that the janitor carrying cleaning supplies was also his future CEO. The wind carried the first drops of rain. She descended. The break room smelled of reheated soup and industrial cleaner. Ada sat at the plastic table near the window, her container of rice and beans growing cold in her hands. The narrow street below echoed with the rhythm of Lagos motorcycles, vendors, the distant thrum of a city that never fully rested. Jason appeared in the doorway, lunch tray in hand. He paused when he saw her, a half smile forming. Lena, right? From the lobby? She nodded, throat tightening. Mind if I sit? Everywhere else is full. The room was empty, but she didn't point that out. She gestured to the chair across from her. He settled in, opening a container of fried rice and chicken. His tie was loosened, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Up close, she could see the fatigue around his eyes, the way his jaw worked slightly as he chewed, working through something. "You've been here a while," he asked. "Few weeks now." "Originally from Lagos." A rehearsed answer waited on her tongue. She let it sit. "Ibadan. My husband passed last year. I moved here to find work." The words came out steadier than she expected. The fiction carried weight because it borrowed from truth. Her father was gone, her grief fresh. Jason nodded slowly. "That must be difficult." "Raising children alone, too," she said. "They stay with my mother for now." He didn't offer pity. That surprised her. He simply acknowledged it with a quiet, "I understand," and returned to his food. The silence between them settled comfortably. Ida found herself relaxing into it. "I work upstairs," he said eventually. "Operations. Basically, I try to make sure people get treated fairly around here." He laughed softly. "Sounds pretentious when I say it out loud. It doesn't. My father always said a." Jason stopped, shook his head. "Anyway, it's just a job," but his eyes said it was more than that. She recognized the conviction. It matched her father's letters, that insistence on decency over profit. "Mr. Jason," she ventured, "have you noticed anything strange around here? In the accounts, maybe." He looked at her sharply. Then his expression softened, as if weighing trust. "Little things," he said. "Transfers that don't match the paperwork, signatures that look off." He shrugged. "Probably nothing. I keep my head down, you know." "Don't want to be the person who causes trouble." Ada's pulse quickened. "And if it were something, would you say something?" He met her eyes. "I'd want proof first, evidence that couldn't be ignored." He smiled gently. "Why do you ask?" "Curious," she said. "About the company I work for." The moment stretched between them, warm, unguarded. She felt the weight of her disguise pressing down, the lie festering in her chest. Jason finished his meal, capped his water bottle. "Good talking to you, Lena. Same time tomorrow." She nodded, not trusting her voice. He left her alone with her cooling rice and the gnawing truth she had found an ally. And she was lying to him. The mop dragged slowly across the marble, the gray water swirling with dust. Ada worked the corridor outside the corner office, the one with the mahogany door and the brass nameplate that read Collinler's Finance Director. Voices filtered through the gap. She paused, wringing the mop head. "Exposure risk is growing." Collins's voice low and clipped. "I'm telling you, the Harper family will be taking a closer look at things soon." Ada's hand stilled. She leaned closer, the mop forgotten. "Begin the consolidation tomorrow. I want everything moved off-site by Friday." A pause. "No, she hasn't arrived officially yet, but Ige's delay means they're already suspicious. We don't have much time." The line went silent. Ada moved quickly, pushing the mop bucket toward the supply closet. Her heart beat against her ribs. Later that afternoon, she watched from behind a potted fern. Collins strode toward the secure filing room, his keycard glowing blue. The door clicked open. Inside, he pulled folders from the cabinet, photographed each page with his phone, and stacked them into a locked briefcase. Her intuition sharpened. He was consolidating evidence, preparing to move it. Evening came. The floor emptied. Ada used the duplicated keycard, obtained through careful observation and a steady hand, to enter Collins's office. The desk computer glowed, screen unlocked. She photographed quickly. Emails scrolled across the display, correcting the irregularities before the new CEO finds anything problematic, ensuring the transition settles cleanly. Her stomach tightened. A message to a contact marked only as Kofi read. Once she arrives and the transition settles, we move the money and disappear. 2 weeks, maybe less. He was planning to abscond with what remained. She copied the files to her drive and turned toward the door. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Ada froze, pressing against the wall. A flashlight beam swept past the window night security making rounds. She held her breath until the footsteps faded, then slipped into the shadowed hallway, the briefcase evidence burning in her mind. The investigation had shifted. Discovery was no longer enough. She was running out of time. The temporary office Adebola had arranged occupied a corner of the executive suite, modest compared to what she imagined the CEO's quarters must be, but more space than Ada deserved as Lena. She sat across from Adebola Ige, his legal tablet resting between them like a barrier. The extension I granted expires today, Adebola said. His voice carried no judgment, only the weight of procedure. I must send the memo to all department heads by tomorrow morning. The formal transition begins within days. Ada's stomach tightened. The announcement would reach Collins before she was ready. He'd know the heir had arrived, that his window was closing. I understand, she kept her voice steady. I just pamper happer. Adebola leaned forward slightly. If you need more time, I can submit a request for another week. The words left her before she could reconsider. Please, I need to prepare myself, emotionally, to stand in my father's place. Adebola studied her through his glasses. After a moment, he nodded. I will hold the memo until you give explicit permission, but I must advise you, the board grows restless. They expect leadership, I know, Ada exhaled. The agenda, he slid a folder across the desk. She scanned the first page, board meetings, department introductions, financial reviews, heritage ceremonies honoring her father, all the obligations of blood and position. Before we finalize this, she said carefully, I've been thinking about the company's financial controls. My father was meticulous about transparency. I'd like a preliminary audit of the accounting department disguised as routine for the transition. Adebola's eyebrows rose slightly. A transition review. Yes, I want to understand what I'm inheriting before I stand in front of the board. I noticed a few unusual accounting patterns myself, Adebola said slowly. I intended to discuss them with the incoming CEO. Ada's pulse quickened. What kind of patterns, reconciliations that don't quite match, a few signatures that appear inconsistent? He paused. I'll compile a preliminary report. Discreetly, thank you, Mr. Ige. He gathered his tablet, pausing at the door. Ms. Harper, if you don't mind me saying, you ask sharper questions than I expected from someone still grieving. Ada met his gaze. Grief sharpens everything. After he left, she stood by the window, watching the city blur into evening lights. One more week as Lena, 1 week to finish what she'd started, and now she had enlisted the company's legal counsel, unwitting but willing. The threshold had been crossed, there was no returning. Chapter 2. The Double Life Crumbles. The corridors felt different now. Ada pushed her cleaning cart through the same hallways, but every sweep of the mop carried weight. The building that had seemed so foreign when she'd first arrived now felt like a body she was learning to read. Every flicker in Collins's office light, every hushed phone call in the stairwell. 3 days since Adebola's audit. 4 until her deadline. Collins had stopped using the secure filing room entirely. Ada noticed him carrying a different briefcase each morning, one that never left his side. Whatever he'd moved it close. She found herself watching Jason more than the ledgers. He worked in operations 2 floors down, but he still made time to pass through the cleaning corridors when she was working. A wave. A smile. A quiet good morning, Lena, that made her hands tighten on the mop handle. One afternoon, he appeared in the break room with 2 wrapped sandwiches. Sit with me. He already had the chair pulled out. Ada settled across from him, unwrapping the bread. The guilt sat heavy in her chest. I submitted something to HR, Jason said between bites, about the accounting discrepancies. I finally put it in writing. Ada's stomach dropped. You did? Someone has to care about this place. He shrugged. Your father built it, Lena. It shouldn't be stolen from under the people who kept it running. She wanted to reach across the table and shake him, warn him about Collins, about retaliation, about how quickly a man like that could destroy someone who stood in his way. You should be careful, she said instead, keeping her voice low. Making accusations without solid proof, it could hurt you. Jason's eyes softened. You worry about me. I'm just being practical. I know. He smiled that easy smile that reached his eyes. That's why I like talking to you. You actually see people. Ada looked down at her sandwich. She didn't deserve that smile. That evening, she photographed the final documents she could access. The timeline stretched back 5 years, 47 million naira siphoned through forged signatures and phantom vendors. She compiled everything photographs, timestamps, her own analysis of the money trail. Her phone buzzed. At Debola's preliminary audit, 17 irregularities flagged across the accounting department. She forwarded the audit and her evidence to a secure cloud storage, a digital insurance policy in case something went wrong. 1 week, maybe less. The deception couldn't last much longer, and every day she stayed silent. The danger grew, for her, for Jason, for everyone caught in Collins's web. The accounting corridor felt different at 8 a.m. Ada pushed her mop bucket toward the water fountain, catching the tail end of movement in Collins's office. Everyone stays, now. His voice cut through the morning hum like a blade. 6 junior accountants filed into the conference room, their faces ranging from confused to terrified. Collins followed, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the nameplate on his desk. Ada's hand stilled on the mop handle. She moved closer, feigning work near the water cooler. I want to know who accessed the secure filing room. Collins's knuckles whitened around his coffee mug. Missing documents, unauthorized entry. Someone has been in those files. Silence. The accountants exchanged glances. I don't care who you think you're protecting, Collins continued, voice dropping to something more dangerous. If anyone has noticed suspicious activity, anyone at all, you report it to me directly. Not HR, not security, me. A woman near the back raised her hand slightly. Sir, the lock on the filing room has been changed 3 times this month. I know about the lock. Collins's eyes swept the room. I want to know about people. Ada swept the floor. Her hands trembled. She forced them steady. By noon, the new camera was installed, glossy black, mounted at the corridor's end, pointing directly at the filing room entrance like a watchful eye. Collins walked past it 4 times in the next hour, pausing each time to examine the lock. He arrived earlier the next morning. He left later that evening. Thursday afternoon, Ada pushed her cart into his office for the regular cleaning rotation. His computer sat dark on the desk. She touched the mouse. The screen flickered to life, empty desktop. No emails, no folders. The machine had been wiped clean. Her photographs, the evidence she'd copied, gone. She stood frozen, heart hammering against her ribs when the door opened. Collins stepped in. Their eyes met. Ada's breath caught. She gripped the mop handle like a weapon.
You're still here?
His voice was flat, uninterested. He gestured toward the door. Finish up, get out. She moved toward the exit, cart squeaking across the tile. At the threshold, she felt his gaze on her back. A weight, a calculation, a question he hadn't yet answered. The door clicked shut behind her. That evening, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Unknown number. 2 lines. Stop digging, or you will regret it. Ada stared at the screen. The message carried no signature, no trace, just a threat, cold and certain. Collins knew. He didn't know who she was. Not yet. But he knew someone was watching. She made a decision. The timeline compressed. She would reveal herself as Ada Harper and confront Collins publicly before he could strike. The documents spread across her kitchen table like a battlefield map. Ada arranged them in chronological order: bank statements, forged signatures, email headers, the transfer records she'd photographed in the dark of Collins's office. Each page represented a thread, and she wove them together into something undeniable. The report took shape by 2 a.m. She titled it Financial Irregularities and Fraud Accounting Department and added a cover page with her name, Ada Harper, and the date. The irony wasn't lost on her. The evidence bore her father's signature, forged 1,000 times over 5 years. She drafted the memo to Adebola Ige next. The words came slowly, each sentence feeling like a confession. Dear Mr. Ige, what I am about to share with you is not easy to write. Over the past 2 weeks, I have been conducting a private investigation into Harper Industries. What I have discovered demands immediate legal attention. She explained everything: the disguise, the access, the evidence. She asked for his help in securing the documents and preparing for legal action. Her finger hovered over the send button for a long moment before she pressed it. The rehearsal came next. She stood in her living room, imagining the atrium, the executives, the moment her face would replace Lena's. I am Ada Harper, I am your new CEO, and I have something to say. The words felt stiff in her mouth. She practiced until they didn't. Her father's letters lay open on the counter. She found the passage again, the one about courage, and traced the ink with her fingertip. The hard thing is not to speak truth. The hard thing is to speak it when you are afraid. She recorded the video message on her phone, a personal account of everything: her discovery of her father's name being forged, her commitment to restoring the company's integrity. If things went wrong, someone would need to know the full story. Jason. The thought kept circling back. She owed him the truth before the announcement. The bond they'd formed, his kindness in the break room, his trust in her, would shatter when he learned who she really was. But she couldn't build her leadership on the same deception she was fighting against. Dawn crept through the curtains. Ada gathered the disguise, the baseball cap, the thick glasses, the worn shoes, and placed them in a bag. She would dispose of them later. The mirror caught her reflection. Ada Harper stared back, eyes hollow from sleeplessness, jaw set with something that felt almost like determination. She was terrified. She was also resolute. Ada texted Jason during her lunch break. Rooftop, 6 p.m., something I need to show you. She arrived early, setting 2 cups of coffee on the table overlooking the city. The skyline blazed amber and rose as the sun began its descent. The wind carried the scent of approaching rain. Jason appeared at 6:02, his tie loosened, that easy smile still lingering from his day. You wanted to show me something. Ada stood at the railing, her back to him. She gripped the cold metal until her knuckles whitened. Thank you for coming. Something wrong? He moved closer, his voice carrying its usual warmth. She turned. I have lied to you. I am not Lena. The words came out steadier than she expected. My name is Ada Nkechi Harper. I am Samuel Harper's daughter and the incoming CEO of this company. Jason's face shifted, confusion first, then hurt, then something like recognition. He stepped backward as though she'd pushed him. I came here to investigate, Ada continued, the explanation spilling out. The disguise, the access. I needed to understand the company before I let it. I watched, I listened, and I found something terrible. I opened my heart to you. Jason's voice was quiet, wounded. I saw in Lena someone genuine, someone kind. You turned that into a lie. Ada didn't defend herself. Everything I felt was true. The kindness you showed Lena was why I trusted you. I understood my father's company through your example of integrity. Jason said nothing. The wind stirred between them. Collins has stolen 47 million naira using my father's forged signature. I have evidence. I'm going to expose him publicly tomorrow. She met his eyes. I wanted you to know the truth before the whole company does. Why tell me? His voice cracked slightly. Why not just reveal yourself and handle this as CEO? Because I owe you honesty, even though I haven't given it yet. Because you deserve to understand who I am before you decide whether you can forgive me. Jason moved toward her. They stood at the railing together, the city spread below them. Who are you really, Ada Harper? Someone terrified. Someone who loved her father desperately and doesn't want to disappoint him. Someone who discovered that kindness matters more than class. She paused. Someone who fell in love with you, even while pretending to be someone else. Jason reached for her hand. The hurt didn't vanish, but something shifted in the space between them. I believe you. He squeezed her fingers, and I think you're going to need someone to stand with you when you confront Collins. The sun slipped below the skyline. They kissed as the last light faded. Not as Lena and a colleague, but as Ada and Jason, both fully seen, both choosing truth. The fluorescent lights hummed their indifferent tune as Ada pushed through the accounting department doors. Adebola Ige walked beside her, his briefcase clutched like a shield. In his other hand, the court order shimmered, legal proof that would open every locked door in this building. The morning memo had gone out at dawn. Ada Nkechi Harper, CEO. The words still felt foreign, but she'd worn them like armor today. The tailored suit, the Harper family pin, her spine straight and her face composed. Ready? Adebola asked. Ada nodded. Building security had provided a new keycard. The old one, the one she'd duplicated weeks ago, would have raised questions now. The filing room door opened. Ada stepped inside and felt the air leave her lungs. The shelves stood nearly empty. Where ledgers and transfer records had once filled every cubby, now only a handful of folders remained. She pulled one from the rack and flipped it open. Benign transactions, legitimate approvals, clean. He moved everything, she whispered. Expected. Adebola's voice remained steady. Removing documents is itself evidence of concealment. We proceed. Ada withdrew her phone. The photographs she'd taken weeks ago, pages of forged signatures, transfer records, the paper trail of 47 million naira vanishing into Collins's private accounts filled her screen. She compared them against what remained on the shelves, noting the patterns of deletion, the careful selection of what to leave behind. Here, she pointed to a gap between folders. These 3 records correspond to transfers we photographed. He removed the originals but couldn't erase our copies. Adebola photographed the empty spaces, the remaining files, the time-stamped evidence of what had been taken. They worked in silence, sealing documents into evidence bags, building a case that would hold in court. By mid-morning, the forensic accountant called. The digital trail confirmed everything. Every transaction, every forged signature, every disappearance of funds. 47 million naira, 5 years. Collins's fingerprints on every keystroke. Ada stood at her father's photograph in the lobby, the one that watched over the atrium. I'm ready, she said. Adebola was already dialing. Police would arrive by mid-afternoon. Jason had positioned security at every exit. Collins remained inside, unaware that the net had already closed. The scene ended with Ada's hand resting on the lobby desk, her fingers steady, her eyes fixed on the elevator that would carry her to face the man who had stolen from her father's legacy, and from every employee who trusted this company to care for them. The parking garage smelled of exhaust and old concrete. Ada pressed the key fob. The silver Accord chirped, its headlights flashing once across the gray walls. She needed to go home, shower, change into something stronger for the afternoon. The police would arrive in 2 hours. Collins would be in custody by evening. Everything was in motion. A figure stepped from behind the concrete pillar. Collins, his eyes wild, his shirt damp with sweat, his hand gripping something black and metallic, not his usual heavy coffee mug. A handgun. The barrel pointed at her chest. Get in, Mr. Collins, and now! Ada's legs moved before her mind caught up. The car door opened and she slid across the leather seat. Collins climbed in after her, his breathing ragged, the gun steady despite the tremor in his jaw. You think you can just walk in here and take everything? Started the engine. 20 years. 20 years I gave this company. The car accelerated through the garage, past the exit booth onto the street. Ada's heart hammered against her ribs. You were passed over, she said carefully. I understand that, but this isn't the way, and you understand nothing, his voice cracked. Your father treated everyone like family except the people who actually built this company. Junior staff get promotions. I got handshake meetings and empty promises. The city blurred past. They were heading north toward the outskirts, toward the dark woods clearing she would later remember as the threshold between her hidden life and her claimed authority. If you let me go, this ends differently. You can negotiate. The only way this ends is if you disappear. The car left the highway. Paved road gave way to dirt, then to nothing but tire tracks through overgrown grass. The trees closed in, their branches reaching like fingers. Collins pulled to a stop in a clearing. Moonlight barely touched the ground. He got out, opened Ada's door, and pulled her onto cold soil. Turn around. The rope bit into her wrists. He bound her ankles too, tight enough to stop circulation. Ada fell onto her side, the taste of dirt in her mouth. Here's what's going to happen. Collins stood over her, breathing hard. I'm gonna flee the country, and you and E, he checked his watch. You won't be found until long after I'm gone. He walked back to the car. The engine started. The headlights vanished into darkness. Ada lay in the cold, her wrists bound, the stars hidden by pine branches. She was going to die here if she did not save herself, if Jason did not search for her. Ada lay still, her cheek pressed against cold soil. The rope cut into her wrists and pain radiated up her arms, but she forced herself to breathe, to think. She twisted her hand slightly. The binding was tight but sloppy. Collins had pulled it quickly, desperately. Not a professional knot. He was a corporate manager, not a criminal mastermind. That was his weakness. Her mind drifted to her father's letters, the ones she'd memorized. Observe who people are when they think no one is watching. She understood now. Collins had watched himself for years, rationalizing theft as owed, and now he was watching himself become something worse. Jason's face surfaced next, his easy smile, the way he'd said her name, Lena, then Ada, then something between them that she hadn't let herself name. A car engine faded in the distance, then nothing. Only night birds calling and small creatures moving through underbrush. Hours passed. The cold seeped through her clothes. Her terror didn't disappear, but it transformed, crystallized into something sharper. She was going to survive this. Her investigation wasn't just about evidence or justice, it was about restoring her father's legacy and protecting every employee at Harper Industries. She spotted a stone with rough edges jutting from the dirt near her bound hands. She worked it closer, then began rubbing the rope against the sharp surface, fraying the fibers one by one. I am afraid, she whispered to the darkness, to her father, to herself. I am so afraid, but I will not disappear. I will not let him erase what you built. The rope loosened. Her wrists screamed as she pulled, but the binding gave. Then, headlights, a car door slamming, voices. Ada, Jason. His voice cracked with fear. Flashlights swept across the clearing, police vehicles, officers with weapons drawn. Jason reached her first, his hands shaking as he cut the rope. He pulled her up, held her as her legs buckled. She sobbed against his chest, and not from fear anymore, but from the release of it, from knowing she wasn't alone. Behind her, Collins was led to a patrol car, his face twisted with rage as an officer read him his rights. The dark night of her soul had arrived. The cost of her choices was real, but Jason's love had found her, and the evidence she'd gathered had transformed a hidden criminal into a man in handcuffs. Ada opened her eyes to gray morning light filtering through hospital blinds. Jason slumbered in the chair beside her bed, his head tilted back, his hand still loosely wrapped around hers. She studied the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his jaw even in sleep. He'd been here all night. She shifted slightly and his eyes fluttered open. You're awake, he straightened, brushing hair from her face. How do you feel? Like I was tied to a tree in the middle of nowhere. She tried to smile. But I'm here. A nurse entered, checked her vitals, and confirmed what Ada already suspected: no serious injuries, just rope burns and shock. She would be discharged within hours. 20 minutes later, Adebola Ige arrived with two police detectives. They asked questions about the kidnapping, Collins's behavior, the location of the clearing. Ada answered each one clearly, her voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing her bones. Collins is being held in custody, one detective said, pending formal charges. Adebola set a thick folder on the bed tray. The forensic audit is complete. Every transaction, every forged signature, every digital trail documented in full. Ada flipped through the pages. 5 years of theft, 47 million naira. Her father's name forged again and again on documents that bore no relation to his integrity. We've secured everything from your car, the detective added. The handgun he left behind. It's airtight. Jason squeezed her hand. You should rest. Whatever comes next can wait. The company needs to hear the truth. Ada closed the folder. This afternoon, a public gathering in the atrium. Ada, the longer we wait, the more doubt spreads. She met his eyes. People will wonder what happened. They'll invent stories. I need to stand in front of them and tell them what I found, what Collins did, and what we're going to build going forward. Adebola nodded slowly. She's right. The board will support whatever you decide. I'll coordinate the arrangements. After the detectives left, Jason remained by her bed. When you stand up there and reveal who you are, the real Ada Harper, what happens then? She considered the question, the identity she'd hidden behind, the lies she'd told, the people who'd trusted Lena without knowing her true face. I'll tell them everything, the investigation, the evidence. And what my father believed this company could be. He stood, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. I'll be standing beside you. You won't face this alone. She reached for his hand again, and this time she didn't let go. Chapter 3: The Reckoning and the Renewal. The atrium fell silent as Ada stepped onto the platform. Hundreds of faces turned upward, executives on the upper balconies, staff clustered near the reception desk, journalists with cameras trained on the stage. Jason stood at the front of the crowd, his eyes finding hers. She drew a breath. My name is Ada Nkechi Harper. Her voice rang out clear and steady. I am the daughter of Samuel Harper, the founder of this company. I am the incoming CEO, and I am here to tell you the truth about what has happened inside this building. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ada clicked her remote, and the large screen behind her illuminated with documents, signatures that mimicked her father's handwriting, bank transfers totaling staggering sums, photographs of files she'd taken during weeks of cleaning hallways alone. For 5 years, 47 million naira was stolen from this company, Ada continued. Collins Chukwudi Eze forged my father's signature on approvals he never made. He stole pension funds. He siphoned money through external accounts. And he did it while preaching values he was actively betraying. She paused, feeling the weight of her father's memory. My father believed this company should serve people with honor and integrity. His name was stolen. His legacy was corrupted from within. A detective stepped forward, confirming Collins was in custody. Adebola presented the court order authorizing the forensic audit, the same audit that had uncovered the full scope of the theft. In the crowd, Tokafa Layan stood frozen. The memory of her dismissive remarks about the cleaning staff burned in her chest. The woman she'd treated as invisible had been testing all of them. Ada outlined her commitments: full financial audits, transparency protocols, reviews of compensation and promotion practices, an ethics hotline for reporting concerns. We have allowed a gap to develop between what we claim to believe and how we treat the people who keep this company running, she said. That ends today. She looked directly at Jason. I have learned that integrity is not something you perform for executives. It is something you demonstrate when you believe no one important is watching. This company will be rebuilt on that principle. Adebola announced formal charges against Collins and the seizure of his assets. Police officers moved through the atrium. From his office, Collins emerged in handcuffs, his face contorted with rage, escorted between two officers. The crowd erupted in whispers. Some employees nodded slowly, satisfied that justice had arrived. Others stared in shock, their institution exposed, their trust shattered. Ada had won. But as she looked out at the sea of unsettled faces, she understood the battle had only begun. There would be investigations, difficult questions, systemic failures to address. The corruption ran deeper than one man. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and tension. Two police officers stood by the door as Ada sat across from Collins, their eyes meeting for the first time since the clearing. Collins's attorney leaned close, whispering something, but Collins waved him off. Your father was a fool. Collins's voice cracked with contempt. He believed in fairy tales about honor and integrity. I built this company just as much as he did. I deserved compensation. Ada remained still, her hands folded on the table. She gave him no reaction, no interruption. You came in here in disguise, playing games, testing people. Collins leaned forward, his wrists cuffed visible against the table edge. That was disrespectful to a man of my standing. You deserved what happened in that clearing. The words hung in the air. Ada felt their weight but did not flinch. I came in disguise, she said quietly, because I needed to understand if this company still embodied my father's values. She paused, meeting his gaze. I discovered that it does not, because of people like you who decided that theft and resentment were justified by a sense of being overlooked. Ada stood. The officers shifted, watching. My father made mistakes. He likely overlooked you, but he did not deserve to have his name stolen and used to facilitate your crimes. Her voice hardened. And the employees of this company did not deserve to have their paychecks reduced by your theft. Collins's face twisted. I will rot in prison for this. Your company will crumble without me. You are a child playing with toys you don't understand. Ada looked down at him without anger. You will face justice. You will answer for what you stole, and this company will rebuild stronger than before, not despite what you did, but because we will never forget the lesson of your corruption. The officers moved forward. Collins stood, straining against their grip, his eyes burning as they led him toward the door. He turned back once, his mouth opening, but no sound came. Ada watched him disappear down the hallway. Adebola approached, his briefcase in hand. Your father would be proud. He offered a small nod. You have carried his legacy forward with integrity and courage. Ada said nothing. She remained by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life across the skyline, knowing the work of healing what had been broken was only beginning. The rooftop terrace had become their place. Ada stood at the railing, watching the sun sink toward the Lagos skyline, painting the glass towers in shades of amber and rose. Behind her, Jason had arranged the small table she'd come to recognize, the candle, the two chairs, the quiet intimacy of a space they'd claimed as their own. 3 months had reshaped everything. The audit was complete. 3 managers, emboldened by Collins's example, had been identified and removed. Each case prosecuted, each theft recovered. The transparency protocols functioned now, open books, clear channels, the kind of accountability her father had always championed but never fully enforced. The compensation review had revealed disparities that made Ada's stomach turn, but the corrections had been implemented retroactively, back pay distributed to those who had been undervalued for years. Toke had come to her office 2 weeks ago, eyes red, voice unsteady. The apology had been clumsy and sincere. Ada had listened, then offered her the new position, culture, and ethics coordinator, a role designed to ensure no one like Collins could ever again find shelter in Harper Industries. Toke had accepted with a gratitude that surprised them both. The monthly town halls drew crowds now, employees lined up to speak, to question, to challenge. Ada answered every one, staying late when necessary, repeating herself until the message landed. Her father had built this company on promises; she intended to keep them. Jason's footsteps approached. She turned to find him beside her, his hand reaching into his pocket. The box was small, velvet-lined. The ring caught the candlelight, a modest stone, beautifully crafted. Inside the band, his family's crest, a detail so personal that Ada's breath caught. "I cannot ask you to undo the deception." His voice was steady, but his eyes held the vulnerability she'd come to love. "But I can ask you to spend your life being honest with me. Will you marry me?" The word came without hesitation. Yes. She pulled him close, the ring warm against her palm. Around them the city glowed, the fairy lights flickered. The rooftop, once a place of solitude and calculation, had become something else entirely, a threshold between who she'd been and who she was becoming. She spoke to the sky, to the memory of her father. "I understand now. You were not asking me to be perfect. You were asking me to be honest, to test people, not to punish them, but to understand their character, to lead with compassion while maintaining accountability." Jason's hand found hers. They stood together, looking out at the transformed skyline, a city, a company, a future built on the foundation of truth and trust. The rooftop had been transformed. White drapes softened the usual glass edges, and fairy lights woven through the railing caught the morning light. Ada stood at the far end, waiting. Jason watched her approach. The white suit fit her perfectly, sharp shoulders, clean lines, the kind of outfit that declared authority without demanding attention. She had designed it herself. Of course she had. Adebola Ige stood beside the officiant, a small smile on his face. He had known Samuel Harper for 20 years. He had believed in Ada before she believed in herself. Jason's parents sat in the front row, their faces bright with pride. Beside them, Ada's aunt and cousins leaned forward, watching. The gathering was small family, a few close friends, key employees who had stood by the company during the investigation. The merger of two worlds that had once seemed incompatible. When Ada reached him, Jason took her hand. "I came to this company in disguise because I was afraid," she said. Her voice carried across the rooftop, steady and clear. "I was afraid that I was not worthy of my father's legacy. You taught me that worthiness is not inherited, it is earned through kindness, honesty, and the willingness to stand beside others in truth." Jason's eyes glistened. "I fell in love with Lena because she was kind to people no one paid attention to. I am marrying Ada because she has the courage to ensure that everyone is paid attention to." They exchanged rings. The gathering applauded. The sound washed over Ada, warm, affirming, real. Later, after the congratulations and the toasts and the quiet moments with family, Ada slipped away. She walked down the stairs and into the atrium. The glass doors caught the morning light. The marble floors gleamed. The living wall of tropical plants stretched upward along the far wall, vibrant and alive. Above the reception desk, the Harper crest gleamed, polished, renewed. Ada pulled a folded paper from her pocket. She had read all of her father's letters, but this one she had kept private. She read aloud, her voice soft in the empty space. "My daughter, if you are reading this, I have not lived to see you assume leadership, but I have faith that you will become the person this company needs. Not because you are my child, but because you understand that a company's true measure is how it treats the people no one is watching. I love you." Ada folded the letter and placed it back in her pocket. She looked around the atrium, at the light, the plants, the crest, the space where she had once pushed a cleaning cart and pretended to be no one. She stood in the center of the room, fully visible, fully herself. The leader her father believed she could become.